So I guess I'm a Nikon shooter now. If you clicked on this video, there's a good chance that you heard the news that RED has been acquired by Nikon. And this is a pretty big move in the filmmaking and camera industry, and it's generated a lot of mixed reactions. I feel like on one hand, there is some optimism that both of these companies are going to be able to share each other's strengths and make each other better. And on the other end of the spectrum, I've seen a little bit of existential dread. And I don't think that's because people are afraid of Nikon's mount necessarily. I think it has more to do with the fear that, these RED owners were supposed to be cool millennial filmmakers, and we're afraid of becoming our parents or something.
We'll give you $100 if you can tell me what this is.
Scotch egg.
It's a meatball.
Progressive can't help you from becoming your parents.
Now, on a more serious note, I want to talk about what my overall impressions of this move are and what I hope we're going to see from this marriage and collaboration moving forward. Now, I think right off the bat, there are going to be a few obvious things that I think that we for sure will see happen. I think that we're going to see RED's IP be transferred over to Nikon, and they're going to have access to the raw codecs. So I think that the Nikon mirrorless cameras are going to have internal RAW, and they're going to have access to that patent that RED has. And there's a decent chance that in the future we could see R3D RAW inside of Nikon's higher end mirrorless cameras, which I think would be absolutely crazy. And I do think there is a decent chance that we're gonna see RED have the option to have the Nikon Z mount, which I think would be pretty cool, and more options definitely doesn't hurt. But I don't really see a scenario where the RF mount goes away. I think it's possible, but Nikon wants RED to make as much money as possible. That's part of the deal when you purchase an entity like RED. And I think that they have enough sense to know that if they killed off the RF mount in future iterations of their cameras, that people are just gonna get frustrated and switch over to a different brand that kind of fits that need a little bit better. So I think in that way, RED users definitely don't have a whole lot to worry about. And my understanding is that Nikon sensors are actually made by Sony. So I think there's a high probability that in the future, Nikon now can make their own sensors and not have to rely on Sony. And maybe we're gonna see RED sensors in some of these Nikon mirrorless cameras in the future. So I think Nikon has a lot to gain, and I think we're gonna see more and more Nikon users here on YouTube, not only because of the relationship with RED, but I think that the Nikon brand and cameras overall are probably going to improve, especially on the video side of things, in the next few years. Now, what does RED gain out of this besides just sort of the buyout from the ownership group of being able to sell to Nikon? Well, I think that RED is going to inherit a lot of resources and stability that they perhaps might not have always had the luxury of having. Nikon is obviously a very well-established and successful and reputable camera brand and manufacturer. And I think that RED now is going to have access to a lot of those resources, whether that's engineers or an R&D department or manufacturing, and just the ability to sort of scale up their production and what they're doing in general. Now, Tyler Edwards pointed out on his channel that RED is still going to be a separate subsidiary of Nikon. So in a similar way that Disney owns ABC and ESPN and Star Wars, and to the general consumer, ABC and ESPN and Star Wars don't seem like they're all owned by the same parent company, but they in fact are. I think it's going to be similar where RED is allowed to kind of exist in the space that it's existed in this entire time. And that if you miss this headline in a couple years, there's a good chance that you wouldn't necessarily know that Nikon now owns RED. But I do hope that we are going to notice an improvement in just some of the product releases and overall kind of stability and polish of some of the RED products. I think products like the Komodo are a good example where this is an awesome camera and I absolutely love it for what it can do. But when it came out, it was definitely in this sort of beta state for a long time. And there are even features on the Komodo today that still feel like they're sort of in beta to some degree. The autofocus technology on the original Komodo is good. Like it's okay for a cinema camera. It's better than nothing, but it definitely doesn't compete with Canon and Sony and probably what Nikon has in their cameras. And I have a feeling that if you are having to sort of report to a company that has the resources and has the ability to help you just put an extra coat of polish on your products to increase your profit margin, that Nikon is gonna resource RED pretty well. And that when RED releases new cameras and has new updates, that it's just gonna have a little extra coat of polish and a little bit more refinement and stability to it. One other benefit that I can see happening for RED itself is the fact that Nikon probably has a decent amount of resources at its disposal, just being so well established for so long, and that they're hopefully going to offer that to RED as a brand. And one thing that I think is potentially, I have no idea if this is true, but is potentially like a benefit that the RED user base is already seeing and getting to experience is the fact that RED brought back its upgrade path for the new Raptor X. So RED a long time ago, when they would release a new camera body, they would have an upgrade path where you could trade in your old brain and, you know, get the sensor swapped out, and they would send it back to you as a newer upgraded camera at a fraction of the price of like the new camera body. So for example, the RED Raptor X, I think it's like right around $30,000. If you owned one of the original Raptors, you could trade that in and they'll give you like a $12,000 credit. It's the same like brain, but you get like a new face with a new sensor, and they change out some of the guts, but your unit is the same thing, and they basically charge you to upgrade it. And this is something that went away for several years with RED, and it conveniently comes back like 2 months before this acquisition is made public. I definitely don't think that RED brings this upgrade path back without Nikon's blessing, just given the fact that the sale of this is so close to being finalized and is going to be made public in just a couple of months. So my hope is that the fact that Nikon hopefully has more resources at its disposal means it can allow RED to do a few more things like this. So on the scale of optimistic to existential dread, I would say I probably lean more towards the side of optimism. I definitely don't have like an investment really at all in Nikon. I don't know a ton about the brand, but I'm excited to learn and kind of see what happens there. I think that if Nikon improves as a brand and can compete more with Sony and Canon in sort of the hybrid video space, then I think that that's only going to make just the tools at our disposal even better. But I think that RED is definitely going to benefit from this because I think there's, again, going to be added stability, potentially more support down the line for other stuff. And I think just having the upgraded sort of resources and manufacturing and R&D and engineering and just the access to Nikon's legacy, not to mention the fact that Nikon makes really good optics. And so we could see like the RED line of lenses come back potentially with Nikon producing them, and just having that be something that is really interesting for RED as a brand moving forward. So I think only time is going to tell, but I don't think that there is really a reason to panic. And yeah, I guess I'm excited to shoot on Nikon, which is something I never thought I would say, but hey, I'm excited to be here. All right, I'll catch you guys in the next one.
Okay, this is a freezer, not a time capsule.